We're just connecting to the recording now. All right, excellent. Okay, everyone. My name is Beryl Oldham, and I am the board chair for the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to this Knowledge Hour. We're very privileged to have Dr. Robin Mann, who has, I would say, is the most experienced business excellence person in New Zealand, and we're proud to have him on the board with us as well. He's kindly agreed to present at our first webinar. And we hope to be running new webinars about every 6 weeks going forward. And hopefully at some point, we'll get to the point we can plan some events again as well. If you'd like to have a look at our website, I will send out the link when I send out the video recording, but we have revamped our website and we are now offering some training opportunities, and also we will be offering consulting going forward as well. So New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation is alive and well, and I'm very proud to be part of it. Now I'm going to turn my video cam off now, and I'll let Robin take over at this point, and I hope you all enjoy the session. We will be taking questions at the end, about the last 15 minutes. I will be checking the chat box as it comes up, and I'll be making a note of the questions, and we can all have a question and answer session at the end. And once again, whoever's joined us recently, we are recording the session, so we will be able to get that to you afterwards. All right, Robin, I'm handing over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Beryl, and welcome to this webinar wherever you are in the world. It's say 11 o'clock in the morning in New Zealand, but I'm sure some of you are working from the day before, especially in Chile and Costa Rica. So my presentation is on business excellence, best practices and benchmarking. I'm going to try and make it as interesting as possible by particularly talking about the work of my centre over the last year. So bringing in a lot of relevant information, practical work that will hopefully enable you to apply in your workplace. So for those who don't know, the Centre for Organisational Excellence Research, it was formed in the year 2000. It's in three parts. There's three entities really, which are part of this umbrella term called the Centre for Organisational Excellence Research. One is Massey University, where we do research on acquiring knowledge and organisational excellence. Another is BPR.com Limited, where we share that knowledge through a best practice website portal. And thirdly, COA Limited, where we apply that knowledge through consultancy and training and events. I actually live in Wanganui, which is in the North Island of New Zealand. In fact, I live close to Wanganui, maybe 35 kilometres away. In quite a remote area, so I always self-isolate, irrespective of whether there's a pandemic or not. But I have researchers and consultants in New Zealand working with me, and also internationally. I probably spend 6 months of my time overseas each year. So I'm going to go through the work of each of the entities associated with COA, starting off with Massey University and our research team there. So we have 3 PhD researchers. It's very important that our PhD researchers do practical research that ultimately organisations or business associations or government can use. So I'm going to talk about their research projects first of all. So I'll start with Saad Ghafour's research, which is called Excellence Without Borders. And this research is supported by the Global Excellence Model Council, which consists of those bodies which represent unique business excellence models around the world. So the Bordridge, the National Institute of Standard Technology, who represent the Bordridge model of the United States, part of that Global Excellence Model Council, you know, the EFQM, we have Singapore, we have Japan, we have Malaysia, we have Australia. So this Global Excellence Model Council supports this research, because this research that Saad's doing is extremely important. What he's looking at is how different countries are promoting business excellence and trying to engage organisations in the excellence journey. So we can learn why some countries are more successful in promoting business excellence than in others. you can find information from, obviously, more information from these website links you can see on the slides here. I'll share the slides later on. When Saad started his actual research, he did some sort of background reading, I guess, and he kicked that off by just trying to look at what previous research has been done academically on business excellence, from which he found there's been 382 papers. Again, I provide the link where you can find information on all that research has been done in the past on business excellence since 1990. What's pleasing is that my centre is produced more academic papers than any other research institution around the world on business excellence. We can also see other research here, which is sharing information that 55 countries have a Business Excellence Award. This is an active award that's been running either in the last 2 years or they're planning to run an award this year. And another 18 countries promote business excellence, but do not have an active award at the moment. So New Zealand is included in that second category. So in total, 73 countries are promoting business excellence, which is more than a third of the countries worldwide. But again, what we're wanting to learn from, for instance, from our New Zealand colleagues here is, why are some of these other countries more successful than perhaps New Zealand in having an active awards program, but also getting great sort of excitement, engagement, where you're wanting organizations to use these models to improve their productivity and competitiveness. So with respect to Saad's research, he's really looking at the role of the business excellence custodians. Therefore, what frameworks are they using, and also how do they deploy those frameworks? And this is really the key aspect here, is how do you create excitement and awareness around the framework? How do you enable organizations to use those frameworks and be able to improve their performance? So when they're assessed against those frameworks, I think they can show a greater level of maturity in terms of business excellence. And finally, what is their approach for assessing organizations for excellence and giving out the major awards for their particular country? And the reason why countries do this and why they're focusing on excellence is because we know that it produces a significant improvement in the management practice and performance of organizations. Huge amount of research has been done on this from both an organizational perspective and a national perspective, so that we know that excellence works. But often it's a case of, how do we create that awareness? How do we help organizations on that journey to excellence? And again, this is something we want to learn as New Zealanders, how other countries are getting more organizations on this journey to excellence. In New Zealand, we use a Baldrige framework, which you can see here. And this is, again, a very sensible approach. It's more sensible to adopt an international framework rather than design one yourself, because then a lot of time has to be spent on validating that framework. And apart from that, organizations now, compete globally. It's a global marketplace, and these internationally recognized frameworks, are well known. And so they'll assist any organization which is trying to sell its products and services overseas. For his research, he's had 26 countries involved, and you can see the countries here. So New Zealand was not involved because it does not have an active awards program at the moment. And Saad's research was very intensive, where he asked each country to complete a survey which would take maybe between 3 and 6 hours to complete. So it's a very thorough survey completed by the business excellence custodians. And then that was followed up by structured interviews in many of those countries. Again, through that link shown on this slide, you can access the initial findings from the research. But I'd like to share with you, just on this slide, some of the what I believe is quite exciting findings. This slide here shows when he asked the business excellence custodian what services they were providing for awards, assistance and awareness. And he was asking, does the business excellence custodian perceive those services to be, well-received services, or are they providing them in such a fashion that they're getting a good response from those services or not? So they had to record whether they believe their own services were very poor, poor, average, good, or excellent. And you can see when they're providing their awards service, which is how they assess organisations applying for the awards. On average, they were rating themselves as 3.8, which is, good for most of those particular processes. So site visits to award applicants undertaken by assessors was scoring 4.3, award ceremony 4.2, consensus meetings, again, is rated extremely highly, the judging panel, etc. But when we come to the next area, which is looking at, how do those business excellence custodians assist organisations on that journey? What services do they provide to assist them, and how do they rate those services? They assess them as slightly lower, as an average 3.3. And you can see the areas where there are opportunities for improvement are on things like online social platform, for sharing between various organisations, industry-specific business excellence guides, online service database of business excellence information and publications, opportunities for sharing and learning from organisations in other countries. So these were the weak areas that they're thinking that they could improve more on in the future. But overall, the message to take from this is that they're more confident in the award processes they provided rather than the services they provided to help organisations on a journey. And then when we look at the services they provided for promoting excellence, again, these were rated even lower. So as an average of 3.1, which is just about average, that meant many of their services, they believe, are below average. And when we can look at those services, they look at that you can read them as encouraging industry and membership-based associations to promote business excellence to their members, encouraging tertiary institutions to promote and teach business excellence to their students, encouraging schools to promote and teach business excellence to their pupils, press releases on business excellence, obtaining the assistance of consultants to promote business excellence. So these are opportunities for improvement, big opportunities for improvement. And I think this is the average from all those 26 countries. So what this shows to me is that all those countries have concentrated the majority of their effort and resources on their awards process itself to make sure it's robust and rigorous. And, this is understandable, but they've had less time and energy and resources to focus on these other areas. And this, I think, reflects the New Zealand situation as well. I mean, to actually run a solid awards process, you need to have at least probably 5 full-time staff in that business excellence custodian, just doing that administration of that whole process. And in some countries, like in New Zealand, even at its peak of business excellence, the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation probably only had about 6 or 7 full-time staff. And therefore, not enough time was devoted to helping organisations on the journey and creating awareness, which means over time that perhaps interest in business excellence will decline unless you're addressing awareness and assistance. Countries which are more successful will have put more effort over time on awareness and assistance, where everybody inside that country, all institutions, understand excellence. And so this is why they can sustain business excellence over the long term. So this is the sort of interesting information that SARD is researching to find out why some countries are more successful or not. Is it because they're engaging with other industry bodies inside the country? Is it because of working with universities? Is it because of government funding, etc.? Moving on next to the next research. This is by Atif, and he's looking at the organisational excellence architecture required to accelerate an organisation's business excellence journey. Therefore, if you're starting off in business excellence, what do you need to put in place? What infrastructure is required to make it successful? Do you need to have a full-time person working on business excellence? Do you need to hire a consultant to assist you on that journey? What assessment tools should you be using? Should you be using self-assessments or facilitated assessments or external assessments? In terms of, of how you engage your leadership in this, how should this whole approach be led? Should it be led by the CEO, senior management team? How much time should they devote to this? Surprisingly, there has been no previous research on this. And so this is very, very important research. I know from my working with organisations around the world that they vary enormously in terms of their organisational excellence architecture. I've seen some organisations with over 100 people in a business excellence department facilitating this whole process, while other organisations of a similar size, of having maybe 10,000 employees, just have 3 or 4 people dedicated to business excellence. So as part of this research, ATIF is going to be involving Business Excellence Award winners from around the world and finding out what is their organisational excellence architecture and how that's varied on the journey to excellence. Because the organisational excellence architecture might vary dependent on your level of maturity, it might vary dependent on your organisational size, it might vary even on the industry you're working in. So again, if you're interested in that research, please contact Atif, because he's going to be sending out a survey quite soon. He's particularly looking for organisations which have been on the journey for some time. The third research project we're doing is with Ranjita Singh. This is really looking at best practices in positive workplace culture. Therefore, you know, how to make a workplace have a more positive culture. The reason why this is important is because workplace positivity is a key component of employee engagement, and higher levels of employee engagement result in higher levels, of productivity. And the research here will be looking at whether organizations can influence the level of employee positivity through introducing various, HR processes, initiatives, whatever they may be. So for Ranjita's research, she's really looking for HR directors and managers to contact her who wish to be part of this survey. And this is particularly important in the time of recovery from COVID, looking at what interventions are in place to, motivate employees and to have them have a positive outlook. It could be simple things, just as having a regular daily meeting with your employees and setting aims and objectives, or it could be more comprehensive in terms of, the whole training program, trying to develop the competencies of staff. So she's wanting as many organisations as possible to sign up to her research. In addition to getting the views of HR managers and directors, she's also wanting organisations, if they can, and this is optional, to encourage their staff to complete a survey which will measure the level of employee positivity inside the workplace. And she would like those organisations to participate not only now, but again in 6 months' time, to see whether there's been any changes when we've been recovering from COVID. And then from that data, she'll be able to correlate that with the interventions on workplace positivity. So please contact her if you're interested. So that's sort of an overview of the research we're doing at the moment. In terms of the work we do in terms of sharing best practices around the world, that's done through the bpr.com best practice resource. This is free for New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation members, up to 2 passwords per member, depending on your level of membership with the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation. This resource has got thousands of best practices in it. It's got lots of tools, techniques, and approaches you can use to improve performance. All the information can be filtered by the business excellence models. We're currently going through a revision of the website. The new website will be launched in hopefully August, September this year. So whilst you can filter all the information through the models you can see here at the moment, these are quite dated, to be honest. So they're old versions of the Baldrige model, EFQM model, etc. With a new website, we'll have the up-to-date EFQM model, up-to-date Baldrige model. We'll also be adding other models like the African Excellence model as well, the Australian model. So whichever part of the world you're in, this will be particularly useful to you if you're trying to improve against the business excellence model criteria. Not only that, we have a huge amount of resources inside this website. We have submission documents of award winners so you can learn from them. We have videos of organisations sharing their best practices. So it's well worth a look if you're trying to improve performance. Also, we're very proud of our best practice reports we produce. We produce generally about 10 per year. We've written well over 100 by now, and we started a new series at the end of last year just focused on business excellence. So we're producing best practice reports not only for each category of excellence, but also the items underneath each category. So in total, we'll have over 30 reports, which means if you're reading these and learning from the best practices, it really provides you with the guidelines of how to achieve world-class performance. Each report is very simple to read, generally about 12 pages long, all very practical information, linked to videos, linked to additional information. So as you can see here, there's an example of the contents of the report focused on leadership and on vision, mission and values. So that's the bpr.com for you. Now moving quickly on now to the consultancy and training work we do through COA Limited. We run, apart from consultancy, we run major events around the world like the International Best Practice Competition. We actually founded this initially in New Zealand when I was a co-founder of the World Quality Congress in 2012. That was in partnership with the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation and the New Zealand Organisation for Quality. And since then, so we've taken this concept around the world. We were going to have an event this year, but it's been delayed. I'm not sure, we might be able to do it digitally by the end of this year, or we'll probably do it digitally early next year. Other events run recently was the Global Organisational Excellence Congress in Abu Dhabi. I was working with the Abu Dhabi Chamber, and we had over 1,300 attendees at that. And again, you go to that website link there, and you can actually download the presentations of the speakers. And it's got some great presentations, from the EFQM and various award bodies around the world and what they're doing in terms of business excellence. In terms of consultancy in the last year, what we've been working on is assisting a number of countries with business excellence approaches and productivity approaches. We've been doing work on behalf of the Asian Productivity Organization, working with the Bangladesh National Productivity Organization and the Mongolian National Productivity Organization, looking at the overall strategy of those organizations and the services they provide, and whether or not having a good impact in terms of raising productivity in their particular countries. In the case of Bangladesh got a population of 140 million people. Just in Dhaka alone, it's got a population of over 20 million people. So it's got a lot of people, and as you can see from this picture, it's also got a lot of traffic. So when we're sort of doing this work, looking at the work of the National Productivity Organisation, the National Productivity Organisation, just as out of interest, is similar to what the work the NZT does in New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. So when we're looking at the work the NPO was doing on productivity, it was very much at a very limited scope. So their view of productivity really was primarily on providing, old style productivity tools and techniques, plan, do, check, action, 5S, Lean, Six Sigma. And really the impact on productivity inside that country had been very, very limited because of the limited scope of its strategy, really. And yet when we look at this picture, we can see straight away there's going to be productivities in Bangladesh with traffic congestion like that, which is absolutely abysmal. Just going a couple of kilometers can take an hour. That's really affecting productivity in Dhaka. So what that organization should be doing more of is facilitating projects, just trying to find best practices in tackling traffic congestion, because that will solve one of the biggest productivity issues in that country. So it's trying to get them thinking differently about how to tackle productivity, engage partners to tackle major issues like that. The other key thing here was that both the National Productivity Organisation of Bangladesh and Mongolia were using a Business Excellence Award. They had a Business Excellence Award. They called them a Productivity Award, and which is right to do. So when we look at productivity, productivity is the value of output over the value of input. So it's trying to get more with less. Really, it's essentially what a business excellence model is doing. You've got inputs and outputs. So the inputs are, the enablers, leadership strategy, customer focus, HR, operations, and measurement, information and knowledge. And when we improve in those areas, we're going to improve our results. So this is really, the actual business excellence framework is really the ultimate productivity tool. And so I asked a question to the NPOs. I asked them, do you believe that this is a good award that you have, which truly represents productivity and can provide sort of a role model of what productivity should be for an organization in terms of how to manage productivity? And they said, yes, of course, we agree with that. But then when we looked at the services they're providing, they were not aligned to the model itself. And so this was getting them a way to think about, really, as a national productivity organisation, we should be providing services in all these areas, not just in the operations area, looking at a very limited spectrum of productivity tools and training. They should be providing tools, techniques, services in leadership, strategy, customers, HR, etc. And in some cases, there might be other institutions which are providing services in that area. So they could say, okay, we're not going to provide services, but we'll work with other institutions to make sure we cover all aspects of this. What's important about this is that it's also important from a New Zealand context, because New Zealand strongly promotes productivity. There is a productivity commission, but I don't believe that they really understand business excellence models or are aware of them. And really, as New Zealanders, if we're trying to promote competitiveness and productivity, then you need to have a guidance, you need to have a role model, you need to be able to provide some guides on how to achieve that. Without the business excellence framework and without role model organizations, there is no guide, there is no best practice. So this is why it's absolutely key the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation survives and not only flourishes, because it provides the best practices on how to achieve national competitiveness and productivity of the country. So these were the questions I was asking Bangladesh. How strong are the inputs to productivity within Bangladesh? And when we think about this, and we then need to, from a national perspective, we need to think about how do we encourage awareness, again, of business excellence productivity? How do we help organizations on the journey? And then how do we recognize organizations which are world-class, which are going to become the role models? And this is really how this sort of consultancy ties into Atif's research that he's doing for the Global Excellence Model Council. Because he's studying this, what countries around the world are doing. So countries really, to be successful, they need to be providing assessment services at each stage of the journey towards excellence and capability building services. And these are just examples of sort of generic capability building services to help organizations to improve. And not only that, you would need to provide both assessment services and capability services as well for each category of excellence. So this is what the NZBEF needs to be a leader in, is in educating the various institutions, especially New Zealand government, saying this needs to happen, and the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation could have more resource to facilitate parts of this. It can't do everything, of course. It's got to work with other institutions. So I now want to talk about another aspect of COA's work, which is on benchmarking. I founded what's called the Trade Best Practice Benchmarking Methodology, or developed it around the year 2000 to 2004. I was running the New Zealand Benchmarking Club, which is a partnership between the Centre for Organisational Excellence Research and the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation. That was run with the premier organisation in New Zealand at the time. Since then, the trade methodology has been used all around the world. So it's a very easy methodology to follow. It's very systematic. indeed more prescriptive than you'd find other benchmarking methodologies, which is a good point because it shows you exactly what you need to do when you do a benchmarking project. So it consists of 5 stages, as you can see here, but underneath each of these stages are steps. So plan the project, identify what you want to do the benchmarking on, review the current situation, acquire best practices, deploy them and evaluate. What I think is not understood is that benchmarking, to me is the most powerful change management tool, because normally when you do benchmarking projects, it's set up with a benchmarking team. You have a project team undertaking the project, and it's helping them on a learning journey. And when you do a benchmarking project, it's not just involving the project team. The project team should be involving all the stakeholders. The stakeholders are responsible for the process, and the customers and suppliers are affected by the process. So benchmarking project is taking the team and all the stakeholders on a learning journey to understand what the problem is, to work together on finding best practices, plus also providing their own ideas on what needs to be done to improve, and then together deciding then what needs to be implemented and then evaluating the outcomes. So it's about changing people's mindsets, and taking everybody on this journey. And this is how you get true innovation, because you're involving your team, you're involving your stakeholders, it's getting people's ideas, plus also you're visiting other organizations, you're learning totally unique ways of approaching a particular problem. So it's changing ways of thinking, which gives you, let's say, new concepts, new ideas, whether or not you're going to replicate something they're going to do or not. So normally in a benchmarking project, you would expect to get between at least 50 to maybe 120 great ideas and best practices. And then it's a matter of sifting through them and prioritizing them, which ones you're going to implement. So this is where you get fast change, quick wins, breakthrough changes. Absolutely fantastic. So in the last few years, I've been working predominantly on benchmarking in the UAE, working with the Dubai government. I've helped with the Dubai government support, facilitated 34 projects. Actually, many more projects have been undertaken than that. I've also worked independently with organizations as well. But these are examples of benchmarking projects. Some are really big, which are going to have societal changes in the UAE. Other ones are more specific. So a big project would be, for instance, about addressing the prevalence of diabetes in the community. So reducing the likelihood of people getting diabetes through having a healthier lifestyle. Other projects are more specific, about just trying to tackle employee happiness within a specific government entity. So it can be big projects or small projects. A recent project last year was looking at making Dubai the safest place in the world to have a heart attack. So if you look at Copenhagen and Seattle, your survival rate from a heart attack outside hospital is 65%. In most countries, like in New Zealand, in the UAE, it'd be between 5 to 10%. And so this project is learning from best practices around the world. So ultimately, Dubai will be even better than Seattle and Copenhagen. So absolutely fantastic, life-changing projects. What I'll do is share with you how we sort of organize a program for this, because you could do a similar program inside your own organization if you're a large organization. Or again, we could even think about how we could do something perhaps in New Zealand, engaging lots of organizations. Most years we have between 10 to 15 projects which we start off at the same time. So they have to put forward projects, and we determine which one should proceed and be part of the program itself. But they start off with a training program, so they all understand what benchmarking is. Then we have a schedule of activities for 1 year. In fact, for this last year in 2019, we only had a 9-month program, which is very, very ambitious to be able to manage big projects in such a short time frame. But this was because Dubai Expo was planned for 2020, so we need to complete them in 9 months. So this is a schedule. You can see training at the start. They all need to submit trade spreadsheets as they pursue the project. This is our project management system, so we can monitor the progress of the projects in real time. We have regular site visit meetings to each government entity, 2 hours each meeting, understanding more in depth the problem and the issues and providing advice and benchmarking. Every 2 to 3 months, there'd be knowledge sharing summits where all the different teams come together and share their progress with the benchmarking projects. These are fantastic because they're all learning from each other on how to do benchmarking, they're sharing best practices, and many of them become benchmarking partners for each other too. We also do special sharing and activities for team leads and benchmarking facilitators so they can share experiences as well. And at the end of the year, we have a final knowledge sharing summit and awards day where we have international judges to come to assess the projects, and each project as well has got to write a very detailed and comprehensive benchmarking report, and we assess them. And then 6 months later, we write a book which shares all the case studies from those projects. So you can see here some photographs from the knowledge sharing summits in Dubai. We can see photographs of some of the activities that we undertake. And you can see that this is the trade project management system. We use Excel spreadsheets because everybody's familiar with Excel. And you can see at the bottom of the slide different tabs for the worksheets. There's over 40 different tabs here, which are really different tools and methods you can use, which are going to assist you when you do a benchmarking project. What you're seeing in front of you now is just part of the terms of reference for a project. You can see here the planning they do for the review stage of trade. It's got the steps associated with each stage on the left-hand side, and then what they're actually doing. And then this shows some of the tools they use as part of a benchmarking project, like fishbone analysis, process mapping, best practice selection matrix, etc. So at the end of the year, we assess the projects. For this year, in December, when it came to an end, we had 3 7-star projects and the rest were 5, 6 stars or 3 to 4 stars. If they're 3 to 4 stars, it means they've done a professional job. And this was very demanding to do in a 9-month time frame. Those ones of which are 3 to 4 stars, 5 to 6 stars, they could still become 7-star projects. It's just at the time of assessing them, they were not 7 stars. Some of them needed more time to implement their best practices. What we'd said to all the organisations is that they need to at least have implemented some quick wins by the end of the year. But obviously some are implementing major change programs and needed additional time. So we have Dubai Police here, for instance. Their project was looking at increasing the security of checked-in luggage, which goes onto the aeroplanes. And for this particular project, now because of greater security and changes to their process, means now there's less delayed airline departures because of security issues, which is saving the airlines $18 million US per year just from this project alone. It also increased the productivity of the baggage screeners as well. For Dubai municipality, their project was reducing the tendering time from once a tender is issued to issuing the contract. They've reduced their average time from 99 days into 33 days. It's going to go even faster than that, which is saving their organisation between 10 to 20 million US dollars per annum. Dubai Corporation for Ambulance Service is trying to be the most innovative ambulance service in the world. So their job initially is to develop an innovation blueprint of what innovation would look like. They can't achieve that in 1 year. They've set an objective achieving that by 2021. But they've made great strides to achieving it. They've improved their innovation maturity score from 46% to 64% and received gold accreditation for innovation management. So wonderful achievements by the teams. When you see the teams do these projects, you see changes in the individuals because they've never been through such a development program like this. So it's a fantastic initiative to be part of. To find information on previous projects, again, I've got the links here, so this provides full information on all the projects. And again, in the bpr.com website, you can see presentations on the projects too. Because of the success of the third cycle of Dubai We Learn and the previous cycles, we're actually not planning to do a 4th cycle this year because of Dubai Expo happening, but we were contacted by Dubai government in April, just last month, saying that because they understand the power of the benchmarking methodology, can we do a benchmarking project to assist Executive Council's Crisis and Disaster Management Committee for COVID-19? So we've quickly put together a benchmarking project to assist the Executive Council's Crisis and Disaster Management Committee. And to do this, we thought, okay, this has got to be a very fast project. It's got to, because the situation's evolving all the time. So the project's going to be about 1.5 to 2 months long. And we really needed people familiar with the trade methodology. So we selected people to be part of this team who've undertaken a 7-star project in the past. And then we're also really selective about the organisations participating as well. Obviously, we need organisations like the Dubai Corporation for Ambulance Services, Dubai Health Authority. Also, we wanted the Dubai Economic Department, Dubai SME involved as well for the economic recovery, etc. So the benefits from doing this project are obviously going to be things like lives saved, health benefits, and obviously faster economic recovery. So just to show you the methodology in a bit more detail how we're doing this. So the terms of reference stage, this now is showing you the steps associated with that. In terms of this particular project now, when we started looking at this in a bit more detail, we said we can't have just one benchmarking team, we need 5 benchmarking teams, and which will be devoted to particular pillars. So we've had 5 teams focusing on a different pillar, one on crisis management, one on health, because obviously that's a key issue, one on food security and supply chain, one on economy, and one on societal behaviour. And we've got set objectives, with delivery dates of what we need to do, working through the trade stages. Because the situation is evolving all the time with COVID, and we thought as well, even if the government were going to wait for 2 months for our response and recommendations, that's going to be too late. So each week we elevate some of the quick wins, the quick best practices back to the crisis committee, to the Crisis and Disaster Management Committee. So our team leader, who's responsible for the whole project, is from Dubai Corporation for Ambulance Service. Each week she would report anything really important back to the crisis team. But ultimately, by the 9th of June, we need to complete the whole project, and then there'll be presentations and benchmarking reports to the actual committee. So for the review stage, the review is thoroughly understanding the current situation in Dubai with regards to the management of COVID. So therefore, they have been using techniques like SWOT analysis, fishbone analysis as well. So you can see here, this fishbone analysis, this was by the crisis management sub-pillar, and you can see the fish eating a COVID virus. So that's what we're wanting. We don't want any more COVID viruses. And then what they do is a SWOT analysis. They do a fishbone analysis to understand the current situation. On that fishbone analysis, it's broken down the sub-pillar. They're breaking down the pillar, which is crisis management, into 5 sub-pillars. So this is the 5 sub-pillars that they think are important. Then they break that down then further into a gap analysis for each of the sub-pillars, thinking what are the current gaps. Because you need to know the current gaps, because that'll help you to think about what best practices we need to find out. So when we come to the acquire stage, learning from other organisations, we use a very detailed best practice search form and approach to find best practices. So now they've broken down the pillar crisis management into these 5 sub-pillars. And this is what we're going to do the searches on: crisis leadership, effective media control, data control and management, effective and efficient utilisation communication channel, future foresight and readiness. And you can see we break each of these areas down even further detail into a set of questions. And then we have researchers doing a lot of desktop research, or even Skype and Zoom meetings to talk to other people to find the best practices. My COA researchers have supported this as well as the benchmarking teams in Dubai. From my COA researchers, I think each COA researcher would find about 20 pages of information at least on best practices for the particular sub-pillar they're looking at. For the sub-pillar of health, our researcher found 96 pages of information, because there's so much information. So, and all this has been reported back to the benchmarking teams who need to then assess that information. What I'll just share with you is one of the searches that we did, because it's interesting from a New Zealand perspective, and is showing that in terms of the crisis management area and in terms of communication, then New Zealand, we feel, is a particular best practice in terms of how the Prime Minister has been communicating to the public and how the Director of Health has been communicating on a daily basis, and also through the 4-phase alert system. It's very clear to everybody in New Zealand. And this is not the same in all other countries. So not all other countries have a phase, sort of a stage system. So we thought this was very powerful best practice which could be learned from. So the next stage for the benchmarking teams is to give a presentation, submit a benchmarking report to the Crisis and Disaster Management Committee on the 9th of June 2020. So an awful lot of work is going into that, and you can see how we're structuring the benchmarking report as well, where they're going to be sharing the title of the best practice idea, an overview of it, current state, recommendations, expected benefits and impact. And then finally, we'll do an evaluation of how successful the project has been. We'll do an internal evaluation and also get the feedback from the Committee of Crisis Disaster Management team itself. Maybe following on from this, there might also be additional projects. So I've talked a lot already about the work we're doing in terms of benchmarking and other research. Again, I recommend you join the NZBEF because you can access as well the resources like the bpr.com, and in the bpr.com resource it's got all the information on trade, it's got training notes, you can see the spreadsheets we use so you can access that information, and you can see presentations from a younger me. Hopefully they're okay. I don't like watching presentations to myself. Maybe when I watch them I think I need to change it, who knows. What I want to leave you lastly with is just one short video, which is just five minutes, and then we'll open up for questions. And this is sharing the findings from a 7-star benchmarking project by Dubai Police, which was completed in 2018. So after this video, I'll answer questions. Thank you very much. No, I've done that wrong, have I? Hold on, I need to click on the wrong thing. Just go back.
Dubai's police benchmarking project is carried through a unique benchmarking methodology called TRADE. In the terms of reference stage, the aim is to implement best practices in vehicle fleet maintenance to improve vehicle availability and labor productivity of the Dubai Police Mechanical Department to world-class levels. The Mechanical Department is one of the key operational departments of Dubai Police that focuses on the maintenance and repair of vehicles to ensure their optimum use. The department has 7 main sections with more than 150 employees. The specific targets set were to increase productivity for the Mechanical Department from 40% to 70% and increase vehicle availability from 88% to 95%. In order to meet specific targets, the Dubai Police Mechanical Department sets the following objectives. Identify the factors affecting the performance of the department, August 2017. Create an action plan, September 2017. Study best practices of other organizations, December 2017. Prepare and execute best practices, January 2018. Enhance productivity, vehicle availability, and production capacity, March 2018. During the review stage, the benchmarking team carries SWOT analysis, develops a fishbone diagram, and holds meetings with high-level employees and directors to understand the current performance, practices, and systems in order to define areas of improvement. A survey for technicians and employees at the lower grade is carried out to understand their perceptions of the factors affecting productivity and vehicle availability. Over 108 employees have completed the survey. After completion of the survey, the fishbone diagram was revised with the team identifying the following areas of focus: spare parts management and storage, equipment, material, tool, manpower and labor capabilities, management system and software. The team has identified performance measures as well as performed statistical analysis to set the average hours for the tasks using mode and median parameters. At the beginning of the acquire stage, Dubai Police defined 13 criteria for the selection of potential benchmarking partners. At the start, the team identified 62 potential benchmarking partners. The team conducted 9 site visits. At the end of this stage, the team identified the following: 31 best practices identified via site visits, 35 improvement ideas suggested by the benchmarking team, 86 best practices ideas reviewed, desktop research, site visits, and ideas, 23 best practices improvements ideas recommended for implementation. During deploy stage, all 35 improvement ideas are assessed based on a set criterion. Key activities implemented at this stage included data cleansing, closing the Burr Dubai mini workshop to improve efficiency, establish a workshop with audio-visual screens to improve productivity and visual management, launch of the incentive scheme and working hours management system. Evaluate stage is all about the final results. The results of the entire projects have been phenomenal, with increase in labor productivity from 40% to 72.2%, exceeding the target of 70%. The increase in labor productivity contributed to a savings of 5,120,367 dirhams. Increase in vehicle availability from 88% to 95%, which resulted in a savings of 14 million dirhams, with future savings estimated to be in excess of 20 million dirhams. The increase in vehicle availability resulted in extra savings of 8,680,000 dirhams, the elimination of replacement costs of about 40 vehicles. Through best practices in vehicle fleet maintenance, Dubai Police won Trade Benchmarking Proficiency Certificate with Commendation, 7 stars, by the Center for Organizational Excellence Research in April 2018, and the Dubai Government Excellence Program, Dubai We Learn Initiative. Another feather in its cap was during the 10th Continual Improvement and Innovation Symposium, Best Practices Management, in which Dubai Police secured first place in service category in November 2018 by Dubai Quality Group.
Okay, thank you everybody for listening. Beryl, it's over to you now. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks, Robin. Well, we do have quite a few questions, so I shall try and find them. Let me see. Okay, so Heather was asking a question about what's the most current research showing organizational results from using business excellence frameworks?
Good question. I don't know offhand. I'd need to ask my PhD researcher Saad about that. But
should we get back to people if you haven't got the information right to hand?
But again, they can go to that blog page, which is, we've got all the academic papers in there, and that will show. Well, we've categorized them, so that will show the latest information.
Oh, good. And also, she asked, what proportion of countries have government funding to support the process? Are you aware of the stats around that, Robin?
I would say the majority have some sort of government funding.
Cool.
I wouldn't be able to say precise stats. I mean, sometimes it might be directly funding for the institution itself. Sometimes it might be based on the programs that they're delivering.
Right.
It depends how you sort of collaborate that information.
Okay, and Sergio from Costa Rica was asking, is there any information about an average score by country in their assessment evaluation?
No, not really, because again, I think I'm aware of the different averages of some countries, but again, it becomes problematic because again, it depends how strictly they follow the international sort of guidelines to that. So, well, for instance, Bangladesh would use the boardage framework I don't believe their assessment approach is as rigorous as what you would get in the United States or in New Zealand. So their scores would be higher.
Okay, thanks. And Bashar was asking an interesting one from Sweden. Bashar, he was saying that during the corona crisis, many decision makers, especially in the government sector, have begun to question why their organizations were unable to survive and deal professionally during the crisis, despite their adoption of one of the business excellence models, you know, and quite a few years ago.
Yeah, well, I think adopting a business excellence model is obviously going to help. So I think if you looked at, if there were some research on that, I would imagine that organisations which are following a business excellence approach, the likelihood of surviving and coming out of this stronger is much higher than those not using a business excellence model, because as part of using a business excellence model, it is all about, you know, business continuity, looking at the risk, future foresight, etc. What is alarming to me is that we don't have governments using the business excellence model, because if they did, we would not have this international mess as it is now. I think most countries were too slow to react to COVID because they were not using future foresight, they'd not prepared, they'd not done appropriate risk analysis, and I'd include New Zealand in that, too slow initially. And so every country's been just really firefighting since then, and some countries have done that more effectively than others.
No, good comments, thank you. And here's one that you can, probably easier for you to answer right off the cuff, from Sergio again. Last week in a presentation we held here in Costa Rica, with George's participation, some people asked about if in BPIR you can have specific benchmarks for sectors such as insurance, financial, or graphic arts, by example. So can you segment them like that in the BPIR?
We will be doing with a new site, but to be honest, that's not a strength of our resource. It's very difficult to get that data. So usually trade associations for a particular sector, they're the organisations which have that data. But the strength of our resources is more on the best practice side. But so with a new website, we'll hopefully we have got solutions in place where we'll develop more relationships with trade associations, organisations which have that data, so it can be brought into the BPIR. But it's problematic. Everybody always asks for this data, but it's always difficult to find. And I always question the validity of the data anyway. The data is not going to help you to improve. It might show you where you are, but it's not going to help you to improve. So data is good for gap analysis, to set alarm bells ringing, but it doesn't provide solutions.
Right. Look, we've got 2 questions left. If anybody needs to drop off now, we'll understand, but I'll just carry on and ask them. We're only a couple of minutes behind. Because there's a really good one here from Bashar again. How can we restore confidence in the business excellence frameworks of government decision makers, especially in the developing countries that we consult? It's about restoring confidence in BE with government.
Where's Bashir from?
From Sweden.
From Sweden. I don't know, because I mean, in terms of restoring confidence, I think those countries which have really embraced excellence and have that in terms of the used strongly by the government entities, I think they'll be getting benefits from that. I think from countries which are not seeing the benefits is probably because they've not been, the frameworks have not been embedded appropriately. So I think that's a sort of different issue.
Yeah, things seem to sort of die off a bit, don't they? And they're not embedded as well as they could be. And if you are asked, there's one last question here, which I think is very relevant for us here in New Zealand. If you are asked to conduct benchmarking for the benefit of the New Zealand government, for example, about government best practices that should be adopted in the future to reduce the effects of any new pandemic, what is your plan for this project? If you were asked to do that. And I think you just touched on some of the work that's been done already. You're already looking at some of the response.
Yeah, we're looking at some of the sub-pillars, and one of the areas which is part of the crisis management pillar is looking at future preparedness. And so they are already doing benchmarking on that. And again, that's something New Zealand should be doing, so that if this happens again, they are better prepared. And it's not hard to do it, but most countries don't seem to do it in a very sort of scientific manner, in a systematic manner. And as I also said previously as well, it's not even just doing it systematically. You've got to be engaging all the relevant stakeholders so that they believe in the outputs that come from the benchmarking approach. So you'd have to engage all the various institutions so that they're part of the program. So when you find the best practice, everybody agrees that this is the best way to prepare for the future, and everybody understands that solution and is ready to go with that solution.
Right. Oh, thanks, Robin. Well, look, I think we're over time and we should wrap this up now. But thanks very much to everybody who has attended the presentation. We will send out the slides and the video, the webinar recording to you. And I would particularly like to thank Robin, of course. Robin, that was full of great information. And as Heather, I think, said, I'd like to quote her, very generous presentation. So thank you for sharing. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Dubai's police